I'm Akshay, a co-founder and CEO of Terminal49. I have Brian Glick with me from Chain.io. He's the co-founder and CEO of Chain.io, and Simon from Jaguar Freight. He's also the co-founder and not the co-founder, the founder and CEO of Jaguar. Actually, Brian, do you have a co-founder
I
or
do
you are the
not, but
founder?
I was being
Yeah,
polite.
yeah.
And I actually probably do because I started the company with my father back in the day. So since he's, I guess, subsequently retired, I
How
just
long?
use myself as the founder.
How long has Jaguar Freight been around?
So 32 years now. 1993 is when we started in both New York and London at the same time.
That's still a startup from shipping terms. So,
Wow. So you've seen a lot happen in global trade, and the world change over the last 30 years.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I think we there's those milestones actually, right? Pre 9/11, post 9/11 from a security perspective, economic meltdown 2008, 2009, and then sort of like the COVID years. Those are sort of like the three that jump out as geopolitical events that shaped our industry.
All right. Well, let's give it maybe 2 more minutes. We have an exciting 25-minute conversation with you all, or is it more than 25? Are you doing 30 minutes or an hour? I forgot. Um, and we're going to be talking about how to make ocean freight visibility data actually work for you. Um, this is a very exciting conversation because we've been working for the last couple of years, three of us partnering together. Ultimately, Chain and Terminal 49 trying to make Jaguar even more successful with their online platform. And so we're going to talk about that, how that happened. Um, what were the challenges before Terminal 49 and Chain came into the picture? Um, how did we help them integrate this data? What leverage they got internally in their operations? And most importantly, how did they build a much better experience for their customers? So we're going to get started in just about a minute. Um, Feel free to drop in your questions in the chat. We have two moderators from Terminal 49, Namita and Christy. They'll be looking at your questions, and we'll have Q&A time at the end, but I'd be happy to take some of those questions and integrate into our conversations. I'll just let's just get started. I know I made a brief introduction, but I'll hand it over to Simon and then Brian for them to make a brief introduction about themselves and the company.
Sure, thanks, Akshay. So I'm Simon Kaye, CEO and founder of Jaguar Freight Services. We're an international transportation and logistics company. People refer to companies like us as freight forwarders. I hate that expression. I don't know what it means. So I coined and trademarked the phrase freight architect, which is very much how we position and market ourselves in the industry.
and
Brian.
I'm Brian Glick. I'm the solo founder of Chain.io. Uh, I'm a former industry CIO, programmer, all the jobs from the technical side. And the problem that we solve is that moving data between systems and between companies is very, very hard. And everybody wants to do cool projects and have fun portals and do AI, but someone needs to make the right data end up in the right place at the right time. So we are the very, very boring and extremely important company that sits underneath all of the amazing things that you all do.
Awesome. Thanks for the background, gentlemen. All right, let's get moving. So we're going to talk about briefly the visibility challenge, but instead of me talking about it, I wanna hand it over to Simon in a second. We're going to actually just kick off a poll. We want to understand. Many of you on this webinar are obviously managing containers, you're tracking containers, you might even have it integrated into your system. If you don't have this automated and integrated into your system, we'd love to understand what the challenges are. So, is it getting internal buy-in, accessing the right data, ensuring data accuracy? So if you could just you'll see the poll pop up and feel free to answer it. So, Simon, let's talk about what did the life look like before Chain and Terminal 49 came into the picture? And I'd love to kind of understand like what was the cue and the trigger for you? You're like, hey, I need I need to improve my system. I need to improve my process. We'd love to hear about that.
Sure. So, as I say often to people, when I started the company in 1993, I'm dating myself back in the days of dial-up. Um, I realized very, very quickly that we weren't in the shipping and transportation business. We were in the information business. And so, very early on, we developed at that time, it was a track and trace program, but we certainly didn't have the tools that Terminal 49 or Chain.io bring to the table today. So, in the 90s and in the 2000s, there was a lot of what I would call heavy lifting, a lot of heavy communication, a lot of heavy updating of systems and processes. And this was something that was like just very frustrating, both for our clients and for our internal operators, our internal users of our system. So, we had to go out and find the information in order to update it, whether it be from carrier websites, if they were reliable and updated, or calling in and being on hold with somebody at a steamship line. So there was a lot of wasted time, a lot of what I refer to as heavy lifting. Clients would be calling us, emailing us, what's the status of the shipment? Is it still on time? Has it departed? Has it arrived? Whatever the case may be. So, they're frustrated because they're waiting for information internally. We're frustrated because there's a lot of heavy lifting. And it creates a lot of friction. And we're just and have been from the beginning, a very client-focused organization, looking to make the path forward for our clients as smooth and as easy as possible, and to give them that visibility. Reporting was very difficult. Again, a lot of heavy lifting and trying to manage schedule reliability, irrespective of what the carriers were telling us about how reliable their schedules are, what was the reality in our world with our clients on the trade lanes that we were operating on. Again, a lot of manual data entry. So once we get the information, manually updating the systems, time delays with certain clients, and then you put it in and you find out X period of time later that that's no longer relevant because the vessel's been delayed, departing, arrival, whatever the case may be again. And so, going back in and re-updating that information dispersed across a variety of different platforms. And just this constant cycle of like this hamster wheel of trying to keep up with accurate information that is actionable for the clients. And I think that's sort of like the key of this is sort of like, what's the purpose of the data, and it's really to provide that to the client that allows them to take action, right, and to make intelligent decisions. So that's sort of like, I guess, an overview of what life looked like internally at Jaguar prior to sort of getting this automated, with the data from Terminal and using Chain.io as the pipe to get it into our systems.
And in addition to, of course, we're talking a little bit about visibility, but I'm also curious about, there are other types of data that you're trying to get into the system, maybe out. Were there other areas that you kind of leveraged, working with Chain to get that data into your system?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, sort of soup to nuts, pick up through to final delivery, but like gate in, gate out, detention, demurrage, when the clock starts, what are the penalties involved with it? So everything that's involved in the life cycle of a shipment, we're looking to bring in and turn into actionable intelligence for our clients.
Got it. Um, and you kind of briefly alluded to some of this, so let's dig into some of your use cases. You have a customer-facing portal that's quite unique in the market, and then you also have that portal slash tool that you use internally. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So yeah, as I said, when I started the company, I realized that we weren't in the shipping and transportation business, or at least that was the easier part of it. The more difficult part was the information piece, right? We're information and actionable information. So we initially built a track and trace program, and then over the years, I'm talking about over a 30-year period now, it's evolved into a full end-to-end supply chain management solution for our clients. And part of that, and screenshot of what you're seeing here is our ETD ETA dashboard, which allows clients to see at their level for their shipments what's on time, what's early, what's delayed. They can click into any of these traffic lights to actually see the actual shipment itself and then communicate with us about that shipment. So this isn't just sort of like static data and it's like, what are these 9 departure delays? It's like, no, they can click in, see the 9, see which ones they are, go into the records. We have communication in there as part of the permanent record, but they can communicate within the record with us about it. Exactly the same with detention, demurrage and per diem charges. So, it highlights for them in a very simple graphic way and traffic lights the status of the shipment, but then allows them to sort of like take action on it and communicate with us about individual shipments so they can adjust timelines internally. So whether goods are coming in for a product launch or a manufacturing run or distribution or just a restock, they can take individual action depending on the status of that shipment.
Got it. Let's also take a look. So you have also details about a shipment as well on your dashboard.
Sure. So what the data that we get from Terminal49 allows us to visualize the route that the shipment is taking. But I often talk about not just visibility, but also transparency as well. So like, where's the information coming from? When was it updated? Who updated it? And so, we provide, with the data that's fed into us from Terminal49, we can provide every milestone update and show who did it. Because sometimes there's a manual update, Akshay, and sometimes there's an automated update as well, and we log that. So it's all about transparency. Who did what and when, and what the update was, and what was it, and what did it change to? Because often you can go into a system and see okay, it's due to arrive on April the 1st, and you go in again tomorrow, and suddenly it's April the 7th. It's like, what happens? And who made that change? And then, so we give that total transparency about who did what and when, so the client not only sees what's happening, but where that information is coming from.
So from your client's perspective, I'm assuming they have like a login, they go into Jaguar's portal, and as the data is flowing from Terminal49 into Chain, into Jaguar, the data just updates, right? And like there's of course, apart from the manual updates that your team is performing, the customer doesn't have to email you. Like what changed when you had this, right? Like what did it do for your customers and you?
Yeah, I mean, the phone stopped ringing. The phone stopped ringing, or the email. I mean, I say that flippantly, but sort of like the noise came down considerably, right? So the noise of, whether it be phone calls coming in or emails coming in, sort of like, where is it? What's happening? Why? Right? Why has this happened? Or, is this accurate? That sort of like, came down to a quiet murmur. And of course, there's always going to be, nothing is perfect. And there's always going to be questions around statuses and if there's anything that can be done to adjust something. But it sort of took the steam out of the relationship with the clients, right, almost instantaneously, and gave everyone, client side and internal users, something that's the most valuable thing that we have, which is time back. Because all of this communication just sucks time, and sucks energy and resources. So I think that's sort of like, internally one of the biggest gains is sort of like the ability to sort of like focus on the important things. Not that this isn't important, but things that we can action rather than just passing information backwards and forwards, and trying to hunt it down.
Yeah, and I have a question related to transparency. I hear from a lot of folks that while they want to be transparent, then it's like the degree of transparency, right?
Sure.
And you can kind of look at it in a spectrum of extreme transparency. I'm curious, what's your viewpoint on, how transparent do you want to be with your customer? Do you kind of control that? Or do you have a view of like, what, as much data as possible that the customer might care about, I want to share that with them. So I'm curious what your thoughts are over there.
Yeah, so I think so at a very high level, I am all about truth and transparency. My father sort of like embedded this in me. He always used to say, and this is sort of like a life lesson thing, sort of like the truth is the best lie. You don't have to remember what you said. And I think that, so if you take that into like our world, it's like give people the facts, be totally transparent with them, and you don't have to be covering, your backside, if something alters or something changes. So, but you brought up a relevant point, which is sort of like the appropriateness of it, right? So we
Right.
want to be completely transparent, but where it's appropriate and actionable for the client and where it makes sense, right? So everything in our system has a date stamp, a time stamp, a name next to it, so the source of the information, so they can at any point look at a record, both current and historical, and say, hey, you know, Akshay, what did you do here? Because I saw you change something on, March 5th at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Actually, can we jump back to that slide for 1 second?
Yeah.
I wanted to point something out as someone who's built a couple of these when I was inside of forwarders. Um, there's two things that are interesting that come back to that transparency. One is that if you look at the screenshot on the bottom right with the map, right? Everyone loves the map. Nobody uses the map. We all know where the places are, right? But you got to have it. But the information on the screen is very dense, right? And it speaks to the idea that what designers and salespeople sometimes value, and what those of us who do actual work value, are sometimes different. And what Simon's talking about is getting to the answer is important, and helping to make sure that the data that's coming out of Terminal 49 is actionable and in a dense format, along with all of the contextual data around what purchase orders are on the shipment, and why is the shipment moving, and what's the impact of the shipment if it's delayed. That density is really, really valuable when you're presenting this information, either as a forwarder or even as an internal stakeholder inside of a shipper organization. Like, don't tell your buyers this is where the ship is. Tell them why that matters in context to, we need to delay the marketing on this, right? And then the second, and then I'll cut, is that date history. That drill down speaks to, and it kind of disappeared off my monitor, but the poll question, like, people are not always completely trusting of the data. And some of the answers we saw in the poll were, the data quality, right? And the data kind of like what is there, and being able to say, okay, on that hot shipment, when I'm actually taking the time to log in to Jaguar and look at this shipment, I need to know whether I trust that data, and knowing that that update came 3 minutes ago and isn't 45 days old. I'm only going to probably drill into that date history screen twice a year, but I really, really care that that information is there for those two shipments or the CFO is breathing down my deck. So those are kind of some applications that I see of why this is the right way to do it. And Simon didn't pay me to say that.
I mean, I think yeah, it's great context, and coming from you're the data plumber here, but understands the relevance and the importance of those different data sets, as well as as I've said before, the transparency to the clients around it, and the ability for them to take action on it or to put context around what's happening.
This one is really interesting and unique. So I'd love for you to talk about this Q dashboard that you have, Simon. Is this an internal tool or also your customers see it?
So yeah, this is exclusively an internal tool. So two sides to our system. It's one database, one system, but there's the internal view and the external view for our clients. And so what we developed is what we refer to as the Q dashboard. So rather than working through, so we're a completely distributed workforce. We're completely remote, since COVID, although we had a very strong work from home program prior to COVID, but we're completely distributed at this point. And so, rather than, having physical files and working through, sort of like the old way of handling shipments, we developed this Q dashboard so we're completely paperless now. And this drives behavior in the operations team. So we have sort of like every milestone that's relevant for every mode of transport on a dashboard that is filtered by the user or a group of users. And again, obviously we're big into traffic lights. So it drives directionally the behavior for the operators, that they can look at the reds and the yellows to understand why they are red and yellow, because they're out of scope. If they're red, they're out of scope. If they're yellow, they're at risk of going out of scope. That's either something hasn't happened in the file, so let's say maybe the notice of arrival hasn't gone out yet when it should have, or a delivery order hasn't been sent to a trucker, or whatever the action may be. And then if everything's green, we're good. Everything's been done up until that point. So it sort of like focuses the internal operator to those records, those shipments that require attention, and they move through the statuses based on, in a lot of these instances, the dates coming in from Terminal 49. So that sort of like drives the status of the shipment, which then drives the action that the operator needs to take. And then just for clarity, what's blue? Blue are exceptions that there's something have this more information that's required or we're waiting for. So that's why you see blue on the dashboard as well.
And has this been around all along, or is this kind of after the data integrations happened? I'm curious.
This is after the data integrations. This is relatively new, within the last few years that we developed this. And I think sort of like, gave us, because of the data integration, because of the data that was flowing through, and because of our specific, distributed environment, we wanted a way to be able to look at people's files as well, right? So for a manager can filter into any person's particular dashboard to see how they're doing as well. So it provides good oversight from a management perspective, and for the operators, it really drives their day and where their attention needs to be.
Got it. Thank you. All right, let's move forward. Just briefly, Simon's talked a lot about kind of how he's leveraged chain and terminal to improve his customer experience internally and externally. So I just want to talk about like what do we do over there. So at the high level, Terminal49 is a container tracking, automation, and execution platform. So focusing on the container tracking automation, this is how I'll talk about three things we do today. We do a lot of different things, but everything stems from these three and how we help a lot logistics service providers and cargo owners. One is, as Simon was talking about the world before, a lot of manual work to track containers. I have a bill, I have an MBOL, I have a container number. I'm going to terminal websites, carrier, rail websites. I might even be tracking a vessel. We automate all of that, right? Everything from an empty out at the origin to an empty return at the destination. We take all the data as the container moves through its entire life cycle through different nodes, even transshipments. We put all of that together. We sanitize it. Like Brian is a plumber, we are a sanitization plant, and we give that data back to our customers through an API and a dashboard. Now, having this data is important, but the more important thing is having really high quality data. And the way we think about high quality data is across three axes. One is across all the milestones, you want to have complete picture across every carrier, every container, right? Do I have all full ins? Do I have all ETAs and so on and so forth? Second is when something happens, how quickly do you see it? That's really critical, right? You are trying to help your customers move, containers move faster. You're trying to take actions on it. You can only take actions if you have data that's like near real time, right? There is no real time, so I want to kind of dispel that myth, but there's close to real time, right? Within a couple of hours, and then accurate. ETAs, are they reliable? ETDs, are they reliable? Did the container make it onto the vessel? Or is it rolling onto another vessel? So that kind of quality of data, most importantly, builds trust internally and with your customers. And the end goal here is to help our customers reduce transit time and cost, right? Time is also cost. And the way we really help our customers do this, and Simon talked a little bit about this in his own flavor, which is proactively identify containers that are at risk. And of course, these are the three kind of areas that we help our customers, and like the way we deliver that experience is like through our dashboard APIs that Simon and Brian integrate. We can integrate this data into pretty much any system, even a custom system, within a couple days. I think with Chain, it's like probably a couple of hours if it's like a bespoke system, or if it's a system that's already integrated. And it's not that you're just buying this data once. It's all about continuously supporting you as a customer. It's not a perfect system, right? So Simon's team comes to us and we work with them on a daily basis, weekly basis, what have you, and help improve the data so their customers are happy. And of course, reporting and analytics is a big part of the value that we deliver as well.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just on that point, actually, it's like, it's important to say perfection doesn't exist. And, I sort of constantly beat that drum internally and externally as well. It's like our job and working with Chain and you is sort of like to narrow the gap from where we are to where perfection exists somewhere, knowing that we're never really going to get there, but we're going to get as close as possible.
Right. Yeah, these are just a couple of screenshots just to visualize what we mean, right? It's like you want to be able to track in a flexible way. We want to see a unified container event stream, right? Things are coming from AIS, they're coming from terminal, they're coming from steamship line. How do we bring all of that together? That's something that's very unique in the market that we do. And most importantly, identify containers that need attention. This is really, could you clear the container before it discharges? could you pay the line fee before it discharges? So your truckers have enough days to pick up the container. Do you know if a pickup appointment has been made? If there's a demurrage, it should be on top. So if you're tracking and managing thousands of containers at any given point for your customer or yourself, we help you with this data, really identify what you need to do in the morning, what issues you need to resolve, and we'll get that container moving faster. I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
And I get to talk about challenges and miserable things because that's what integration people do for a living. So, no, I think the first point here is how do you actually integrate this? How do you, and not the XML files and APIs and stuff, that IT people can sort that out. It's honestly not the end of the world to move data. How you productize it inside your organization matters. And the introduction of product thinking into both freight forwarders and internal logistics department is still a kind of new cultural phenomenon. So I want to explain what it is. It's the idea of saying, who am I providing this information to, and what job needs to be done with this data, and then presenting them in a way that makes that job efficient. So Simon gave a really good contrast there of there's no dot on the map on the internal dashboard because that's not useful information to his internal employees. It's where's my exception? What do I need to do today? So you have two different ways of productizing the same data stream. In Simon's case, because he owns this whole IT stack, it's all one database. In a lot of companies, that might mean I need to take the Terminal49 data and I need to put some of it into my TMS, but I also need some of it in a data lake. Or it might mean we still have a Airtable or a Monday.com dashboard that we use inside our team that also needs two of the milestones, right? We have our buyers only want to know when the stuff left the factory. And so we want to get that one stream. So it's about kind of not thinking of this as I have one stream of data and it has to land in one place and be used for one reason inside my team, but how can you productize that? And then how can you get that signal out to the people who need it so that they have it in the context of their job? One of the things we talk about a lot at Chain is eliminating swivel neck, which is I've got one piece of information on one monitor and I've got my actionable system on the other, and I have to keep going back and forth all day. How do you take that data and put it in the right spot? One of the things that has changed in the last 5 years is more and more companies are understanding that their TMS is not their only system, and that your TMS may only need the milestones that your operators need because their job to be done is to clear the freight and get it released and get it delivered. But your analytics team and your pricing team and the team that's doing carrier negotiations, or the team that's building the KPI dashboard for your forwarder if you're a shipper, or your buyers, lots and lots of people who need different bits of this data. Like the buyers are not going to care about all the transshipment points and all of that stuff. They're going to care, is it on time? Is it on time? Is it on time? Do I need to call Walmart and tell them the delivery is going to be late? So those kind of things of saying what signal needs to go where. Everything goes to a data lake, hopefully. Some things go to the TMS. Some things need to go to your order management system. And we have to, as an industry, I've been beating the drum. We all need to stop thinking of everything lands in my TMS and then I run a report. Take the raw data and put it in lots of places. And the way to get that paid for in your company, the way to get it done is to actually know the impact, right? It's to say, I'm not buying Terminal49 because I need visibility data, or I'm not funding an internal portal because it's fun. Like Simon doesn't do this because it's fun. Simon builds the internal dashboard because he knows it reduces his cost and improves his client success rate and his customer retention. And so if you can go back to your management, go back to your people who have no idea what any of these milestones mean and say, we are going to have more on time in full because of this, right? Or we are going to proactively manage exceptions with our 4 largest customers. That's the KPI. Then you walk backwards, right? Then you say, okay, what system does it need to be in and how do I productize it? So if you don't start with the KPI you're impacting, the customers that stop using visibility data 2 or 3 years after they started buying it are the ones that don't know what KPI needle they're moving in their company. So that's sort of my advice of the challenges is product thinking, putting the data where it needs to be, and making sure that you have a clear business story.
It's about delivering value, right?
Yes.
And,
Amen.
and quantifying that value, whether that be internally or externally, right? So, you know, I always say whenever I meet a new prospect or a new client, if we're not able to add value to current state, we don't want to do business with you. Like, I don't want to like put you through that rigmarole of change and everything. It's like we've got to add value, and you've got to add value to the client, and you've got to add value to the team internally, and make their lives easier, right? And you know what's important to them, again, internally and externally, make it easier for them, make it more valuable.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. um, the other thing to think about is when you start using this data well, like if Simon suddenly couldn't get all the Terminal49 data, his dashboard falls apart instantly. So it becomes mission critical. And a lot of times what happens is these things start as experiments, they evolve, but they never get hardened. And they don't, people say, okay, well, I'm going to give this data to all my buyers, or I'm going to give this data to all my CSRs. I'm going to do all of this. Well, now it's critical that you think about the integration, the actual mechanics as a mission critical function in the company. And so this is that next evolution of saying, now I have a product, that product has to work all the time. And so that's why, like Simon has very smart IT people in his company, and they could have integrated directly with Terminal49. They don't need Chain.io to do the minimum. But these are the dashboards in Chain that Simon's IT team can look at to see every transaction, to reroute data to different destinations. And again, very information dense and not exciting stuff. But what it lets them do is two really important things. One, every container, everything that they're tracking, if there's a problem, they can go and see what happened and why did it fail. And they get alerts and emails and scream that if a connection goes down or an API key fails, because it's now a customer facing problem. It's not just a nice to have. And the second is when they want to reuse that data, we have a plugin module. So their ability to say, okay, I also want this data to go to Snowflake now, is not re-architect the world and go drag the programmers back from the back room again. It's okay, add another system and just route this data over here. So that's why thinking about the infrastructure of this matters, because that's what lets you get to that productization and those multiple use cases, whether it's with Chain or with someone else.
I want to dig into thinking about that infrastructure piece, because I think like, you know, you once the data is integrated via Chain's platform does a lot of heavy lifting. But there's this moment between like when Simon is like, okay, hey, I want to integrate this, and you know, he comes to you, Brian, and that period between, hey, we want to do this, and the end, that's really interesting to me. And I think you, Brian, you do this really well with customers. It's like this consultative experience and architecting, process mapping. If both of you can speak a little bit about that, like, I know that I'm sure that was a long process, but like, what's important there? How did you help Simon? Simon, like, what was that experience working with Chain on that experience?
Yeah, I'll start with just there's a visibility button in Chain, right? And this gets to the best practices point, which is having integrated many, many visibility providers with many, many different companies, there's a way to do it right. And what internal IT teams don't necessarily know is that way, because they're only going to do the project once. And so one of the benefits Simon gets from us, and he got it also when he went and started looking at CO2 data, was we're like, this is how it's done, right? And most CIOs that I talk to say that the Chain's ability to increase their time to value from I want to do something to it's done is more valuable than what we do as it runs all the time. It's let's cut out the year in front of a blank whiteboard of arguing of where, you know, an arrival date should land, or how to make the distinction between an air freight arrival and an ocean freight arrival, or an FOB arrival versus a DDP arrival, or door to door, port to port, or a million things just around an arrival date, right? With a platform that's built for supply chain, I think the value we bring to Simon, even more than the data processing, is saying, here's the one way you're going to do it. Now just go and do it, and then go build your product on top of it. But Simon, you might disagree. I don't know.
No, I mean, so you're sort of, bringing back memories of like life before chain, sending a shiver down my spine because, prior to chain, we had our development team doing all of our integrations. We integrate with clients and, with other integrations, and it was long and painful and frustrating. And, literally when we Brian and I met a number of years ago at a trade show, and when we engaged with Chain, it was sort of like suddenly the pressure got relieved out of the valve, because Chain, and Brian in particular, understands the industry, understands the value of the data, and has all of this experience in the plumbing world to sort of connect systems. Developers, IT developers, are just not integrators, and vice versa. And so, having gone with an expert, the expert, in this arena, it's just night and day. And we were able to do, really fast track the integrations, which, to your point, Brian, is just, it's an enormous value. So
you're gonna make me
I'd almost
cry.
rubbed it.
Stop before I start crying.
No, but I rubbed it from my memory banks, what life was like beforehand, and you suddenly reminded me of it. It wasn't pleasant.
I don't want to add anything to that, Akshay. That's a quick on my head.
That's a good one.
That'll be on our website in an hour in case anybody missed it.
So from our perspective, I think there's a lot of different data that's needed to move a container, right? Visibility is just one piece. As Simon pointed out, there's a whole workflow around documents. Today we have a really, really good story. I mean, we track containers globally, but anything coming into North America, we have deep network integrations from terminals and rail. But we want to do that, go wider with that, right? We have lots of customers like Jaguar that are moving containers into Europe, into Latin America, into India, China. And so having a wide coverage and deep coverage of integration is very critical. We've seen the story with carrier last free days becoming really, really critical, that deviate away from terminal last free days. So we're building that out. And we want to go deep in building as container milestones is a foundation, documents as a foundation. Our customers spend a lot of time wrangling documents, finding information from the documents, taking information and making new documents, connecting documents to shipments or containers. And we want to help our customers do that, which is manage all your documents, extract it, enrich it, and share it with the appropriate parties in an automated fashion. That can unlock a lot of different workflows similar to what Simon has, which is compliance, SKU visibility, finance workflows. And all of those are necessary in order to move the containers more efficiently. And that, this unlocks a greater opportunity, which is how do you automate a lot of workflows? How do you bring more visibility into more workflows? And how do you collaborate with your partners and customers across those workflows? So, these are three things that we're working on. And our philosophy is that it's not about building this experience into Terminal49's dashboard. We know our customers use this data in different platforms. They might be using in their ERP. They might want it in their support system. They might want it in their data lake. And so everything that we do is built as an API or it's programmatic that can be integrated into your system. This is where a company like Chain can leverage different types and artifacts of data and integrate it into your wider ecosystem. All right. Well, that is the end of our presentation. We have a couple minutes left. Would love to take any Q&A if you have, and three of us can stay for 5 to 10 more minutes. Let's see if there's any Q&A.
think everybody's quiet today. So
Seems like we answered all the questions.
Yeah, I was
we
gonna say
were just
you answered all the questions, Akshay.
we should give Akshay credit when Simon mentioned that we were at that trade show together. Akshay was there too, and that's actually when we started our relationship with them as well. So we've all been doing this quite a long time at this point. 3 different decades that we started in, but we're all here at the same point.
It's all converged.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Actually, sorry, I'm used to running these things.
So do you recommend carrier ETAs or AI ETAs for surfacing to customers? Great question. I have an opinion, but I'm curious what you guys think.
My answer would be both, and it gets to that transparency thing, right? And there's an internal activity that you need to do before you make that decision, which is to look at your data from in both ways and decide what you believe the truth is, because ETA is also kind of a relative term. It's like, how do I know afterwards what was the right answer to? I'm comparing these 2 columns in a spreadsheet, but like, how do you go back and figure out what the thing is? We've had a lot of customers look into this. My advice is, like, if you think the AI ETA is better, use it, but also show the carrier ETA, because the last thing you want is for that carrier ETA to be right and to not be able to show the audit trail of here's why we made the decision. And it gets to a lot of things with AI is show your work. So I would never hide the carrier ETA, but you may decide that the AI ETA is better and surface that to the customer. Like, never hide from the customer. As Simon said, the truth is the easiest lie, right? Tell them the truth. This is what the carrier said. This is what we think is the variation that is likely to happen based on that data.
My TLDR is like, it depends, right? Is because just slapping AI on an ETA doesn't necessarily mean the ETA is better. And there is a good way to test ETAs. Is like, you can I'll get a little technical here. Is what is an ETA to the port of discharge for a shipment, not just for like a vessel, because a shipment can go across different vessels. So it makes life a lot more complicated. And remember, each vessel is going through different port calls. So if it might just be going through 2 transshipments, it's actually stopping, starting and stopping at probably a dozen different locations. So ETAs are very complicated, very hard to get right. Then you might ask is, what is the ETA 3 weeks before, 2 weeks before, 1 week before, 2 days before, in the sense that is the quality of that ETA is reliable as you go farther and farther away, right? So we have to really think about ETA as a much more sophisticated, when are you asking for it? When do you need it? And I will say, look, carriers are trying to do the best to calculate and provide high quality ETAs because it helps their operations as well. The most important thing, which is what we do, is get the most current ETA. What was the original ETA at the time of discharge from the port of lading is probably going to change. And trying to update the ETA manually every day, multiple times a day, is not something anybody should do, right?
Look, here's the blunt. Let me be really, really blunt, and we can maybe wrap with this, but like 90% of the shippers that I talk to have an estimated transit time from Asia of 6 weeks in their system, and that hasn't changed for 9 months or a year. And once a year they go through, they run some spreadsheet, and they say, this year we're going to do better. We're going to update that every 2 weeks with that estimated transit time. And then that flows from the order down to the operations, and none of this data makes it back in. So for the vast majority of people in the world, just getting regular updates to what Akshay was saying is so much more important than whether the data is like precision accurate, because unless you're doing fruit or pharma, the 2 days, like, you're going to get such a business benefit from just getting regular updates is going to vastly outweigh that little bit of a variance.
Yeah, my short answer is do not trust the AI ETA right now.
So there you go.
I think just going back to the transparency bit, what Brian said, it's like whatever you're relying on, from our perspective anyway, make it transparent. It's like that's what you're relying on, and show the frequency of the updates and the last update. So if the last update was a week ago, potentially it's not accurate anymore. So I think that it really comes back to the transparency and the visibility, and just about being truthful about what you're showing here and where it's coming from.
All right. I think we are good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you on the interwebs.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.